in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the counsel of the Lord, that shall stand. If you don't mind, I'd like to read it in the Amplified Translation. Many plans are in a man's mind, but it is the Lord's purpose for him that will stand. Let me read one more translation. Let me read the New International Version, so that I could look at it from different angles as it is presented to us. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. May the Lord bless this word in our hearts in the name of Jesus. I know that as you are seated here, you have plans in your heart. Either it is good or not is not my first problem. You have plans in your heart. You have a dream. You have a vision. Possibly a destination. Jesus was speaking with disciples. Said, don't let your heart be troubled. You believe God, believe me. I go to prepare a place for you. If it's not so, I will have told. And the way I'm going, you know. And the way you know. Thomas said, we don't know where you are going. How can we know the way? So I realized that only a man who knows where he's going will always discover the way to the place. And so every man, no matter how small, asks a little child, there is something he's thinking in his mind. In a man's heart, there are many plans. King James call it devices. Your phone is a device. Your laptop is a device. Okay? Actually, the car you ride is a device. The book, either it is hard or soft, for me, it's also a device. It's an instrument that you use to do certain things. There are many devices, many gadgets in a man's heart. However, the purpose of God, the counsel of God, only that shall stand. Now, I like to say some few things there before I proceed. So it means that in my mind, I could have so many plans, and I also have devices or, permits me, routes through which I believe I could achieve my plan. I wish I could speak to you very clearly tonight. And I'm praying the Lord. How many minutes do I have, sir? All right. Please listen. Because what we have come to discuss, if I am not able to discuss everything, I would like to set some basic truth on course that you can build upon as you move from here. Nobody among us decide to come to this earth. And nobody occurred here accidentally. I didn't decide that I'll be coming to this world. You never decided. You met yourself here. However, I also want to say to you, nobody among us is a biological accident. We came in here on purpose. I am driving at something, and I want you to listen very carefully. Because, you see, I have concern in my heart about us, yes, permit me to use the word, about us, not using church English. You know, church English is, we want to tell ourselves that we must, all of us must be together. That's the way we speak in church. It's all right. But you see, I know that we have God's Spirit in us. I know also that we are armed with our date of birth. Each one of us seated here, I am thinking that we are civilized enough to know the day you were born. All right? I read Obasanjo's book and he said he had 3 dates of birth. Okay, he has official date of birth. He has the one his parents tried to explain to him, and he also has the one that God knows. He said he has 3 dates of birth. All right, I understand him. But I like to say to you that every one of us, we know that there was a point at which we were born into this world. And I ask, everything, every gadget in this hall came in at one time or the other. And if we have possibly a curate or somebody who is in charge of the property of this parish, they will be able to tell you the exact date that each item came in here. But I'm thinking that there is none that came in here without a reason. Nothing, I look around here, that is inside this hall that is without a reason. It has a date and it has a reason for it to be here. Anything that is in this place that has no reason has become a refuse. Am I communicating? Please listen. I'm dancing around Romans chapter 19 verse 21. I'm going to jump out of there very shortly, but I needed to establish this because that's the base on which we are going to stand. Our discussion is going to actually stand on that verse before I travel to begin to unravel. So what is the purpose of God, and at what point do we think this purpose should emerge? Or at what point in a man's life do you say this purpose is emerging? None of us was conscious the day we were born. I wasn't. But I was told the day I was born. They even told me what happened in the vestry where I was born. I was born inside the vestry of a church. You know, I grew in a church where they never believe in orthodox medicine. They don't use medicine. Okay? And so I was born inside a vestry. We don't go to the hospital. That's the faith of my father. And he died at 105. And he will not take medicine. We take now, and we don't live long. Let me leave it. It's not important. Okay? It's not important. How many of us celebrated our birthday last year? All right. How many of us have celebrated ours this year? Okay. All right. Thank you. The brethren also organized a Thanksgiving service for me when I clocked 60, April 29 this year. And it's okay. So how many of us remember the dates of our birth? You do. Okay, how many of us do not know the date of your birth? Nobody. Even that small boy knows the date of his birth. Great. Okay, so you know when you were born. Okay, so how many of us know why we were born? All right, I see one hand. We're not sure. It's okay. And I think that's why we're here. So I want to ask you, do you think it is right for you to celebrate your birthday when you know when you were born and you don't know why you were born? Why do you celebrate something that you don't know why it exists? Serious matter. But let me look for a way to navigate around that. You know, at this point now, I felt I should just relax here and deal with this issue itself before pursuing the main matter that we have come to pursue. But I will try and merge the two because they flow together. So this Bible tells me that there are many plans, many devices, many means in the heart of a man. Everybody that is seated here full of plans. And we are thinking about so many things. I planned as a young boy, I wanted to be a soldier. I just love soldiers. I don't like indiscipline. I love men who are disciplined. Discipline. I don't like lawlessness. And I found soldiers to be very disciplined. So I wanted to be a soldier. But my mom would not allow me. Because I happen to be the only child. Okay? So I said, all right, if you not allow me to be a soldier, I also love to be a lawyer. And I told my father, I want to be a lawyer. And he said, lawyers are liars. As a Christian, you cannot be a lawyer. No, those men were extreme, you know. They were extremists. I give it to them. Yes, sincerely wrong. It's all right. You can't even be a pharmacist in our church. You can't be a medical doctor in those days. You can't. How? You must have been a backslider for you to think that you want to be a medical doctor. No. I know pastors in our church who told me that when my father preached to him and he became converted, he shut down a pharmaceutical store. He said he cannot be preaching Christ and yet be selling drugs. That is contradictory. He told me himself before he slept. Those men were strong. I met Christians who are raw. I was raised by them. So fortunate. But leave them. They are gone. I'm here. And you are here. We are still the one on track. And we have to run. All right. So, we came in here. We know the date in which we were born. And as we are growing, we're exposed to many things. Our parents, environment, education, church also, culture, language, things that are around us, happening around us, began to write on our minds and began to create ideas in our minds. And so many of us never asked, so why was I born? So we allowed those things that permits me to use the word infiltrate into our minds to form our person and our personality. And we begin to pursue dreams based on those things that filter into our minds. So we became men that God didn't know. I'll tell you why I said so. And I wish it will not change the course of this discussion. Jeremiah chapter 1. I just want you to see it. Permit me. Are you there? Verse 5. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Could God be a liar? Eh? He cannot. Sir, is it possible for you to know something that does not exist? It's not possible. Before I formed the first, no, Jeremiah, I formed thee. I did not. You know, I'm torn into pieces now because I am watching the time and I have so much to discuss. Okay? But please wait. Everything, most things that I read about in Genesis chapter 1, God pronounced them into existence. Let there be light. There was light. Let there be stars, and stars came. Let there be vegetation. They came. But for man, he didn't say let there be man. Man is not a product of a statement. It's a product of a process. Let us make man. So he told Jeremiah, before I formed thee. So I formed. Not that I spoke. I crafted you. But before I did that, in the belly of your mother, I knew thee. So if I ask you, how old are you? What you will tell me is to calculate from the day you were born till today. But God said, ever before your mother conceived you, he knew you. It meant that you had been in existence before your mother conceived you. You were never an abstract. To your mom, you were. To your dad, you were. To the environment, yes, you were. But to God, you are not. And look at what he said. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctify thee. The word sanctify means I separated you. I set you apart. I consecrated you and ordained thee, what please? A prophet. So, when was Jeremiah a prophet? Before he was born. Now, so when he was born, let me assume that he decided to be a professor. It is also pro. Okay? He became a professor. So, who has he become? Sir? Someone else. Adulterated version of who he is. Listen. You know, many of us will get back to heaven. And God will say, I don't know you. Not because you have committed a sin, but because you have changed who you are. Because you have lived for a different reason. Am I communicating? Now, I don't want to come here, but you see, I've been provoked to come to Jeremiah, and I feel I should just scratch it a little. I studied accountancy, okay? And I did business a little. Did videography, sold vehicles. And so one day, I went to my dad. Thank God I went to him. Things were not just going on well in my business. As a Christian, I was not going to joke with God, with his word, with prayer as a businessman. I'll get to my office 6 a.m. on Monday. I will pray till 12. It's a tradition. Every Monday, that's the way I start. 6 a.m. to 12 noon. 6 solid hours of prayer before business will start. That's the way I was living as a businessman. But it wasn't working at a point. I became worried. So I went to my dad. So I've done all I could do. Things are not working. And then he looked at me and said, Kai, I didn't remember to tell you. I didn't know that I would have a child in life. He was about 70 years old when he had me. So I didn't know I will have a child in life. But I told God, if you give me a child, he will be your servant. Now, look, devices. I wanted to be a military man. I wanted to be a lawyer. I have become an accountant. I'm already in business, auto business. All of those are wrong version of who God designed me to be. He configured me to be a servant of his. But I suspected, because then the only thing I do without stress, without struggle, is to preach. Every other thing I will have to struggle. But this one, I won't struggle to preach. I won't get tired preaching. I don't get tired preaching. I just found it very easy. You know why? Because that's what I've been confused. When you take fish and you drop fish inside water, you have brought it to its natural habitat. So each time I'm introduced or exposed to the pulpit or to preach, they have brought me to my natural habitat, because he configured me with materials for a servant of his. Listen. Can you give me back that Proverbs 19:21? I know time is running, but permit me to. Where's our media man? Okay, thank you. Look at this. There are many devices in a man's heart. Nevertheless, the counsel of the Lord, that shall stand. NIV says, shall prevail. So the word prevail is a word of victory. Am I right, sir? It looks as though there is a fight between God's counsel and plans in our hearts. And the Bible says, no matter how smart you are, God's counsel, God's purpose will prevail, because he will sponsor his purpose. He will fund his purpose. He will energize his purpose. Anything outside that is meant for frustration. So let me let me say this so that I can leave this place. You didn't plan to come here. That's where I started from. I didn't plan to come here. Yet you are never an accident here. In fact, it is possible your parents told you that they have stopped bearing children, that actually your conception was a mistake to them. To God, you are his counsel. Am I making sense to you? To God, you are what? His counsel. Every time I carry a baby in my arms for dedication, or just to visit and say, look, this is your baby, can you carry your baby and bless your baby? Every time I carry a baby in my hand, the first thought that comes to my mind is God. You have a story you want to tell, and you don't know anyhow else to tell that story except to craft a human being to explain that story by his life. I know you don't know why you were born, but let me ask you, how did you know your date of birth? I didn't hear you. You are told. Your parent told you. Great. And they did well by telling you. Now, do you also know that the purpose for your living should be heard from somebody? Somebody should tell you. If your parent did not tell you, then God should. Now, I wish I could